Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look. Well, good evening, everyone, and I'm Stewart, and we're going to try and get a hold of Larry. He's not... Oh, there he is. Okay, just got him. All right, we'll see what happens here. Excuse the delay here. We're having all kinds of problems, folks. We can't notify anybody that the show... Yep, got you now.
Okay.
But we are having trouble. Yeah, I think this is all deliberate and willful, and our method of notifying everybody on Blog Talk and Facebook and Twitter, it doesn't work anymore, and all we get is the roundabout. Well, we're working on it, or do this and it'll work, and it doesn't work, and it's just very strange how all of this is going on when the censorship is just increasing everywhere. Anyway, how you doing up there on the mountaintop?
Oh, I'm struggling with my glitches, and I want people to know I apologize for my blog and Yahoo group lately. I've been facing the same dilemma. I'm having trouble even getting a blog out or writing in Yahoo group at all, so I ask people to just be patient. We're doing the best we can do.
Yeah, it's. I don't think people realize how much censorship is really going on, and this is how they do it. They did that to Diamond there in Silk, I think it was, where they just refused to alert people that they were doing a show or whatnot, and that's what's going on here. We can't alert anybody that we're doing a show, and we can tell by the numbers it's dropped off quite a bit because of that. This is going to happen more and more and more. Nothing we can do about it, I guess. Where do you want to start here, Larry? We got a lot of news going on. You did something on the, you got some new Bible codes. Why don't we start with the codes that you found out about? And I think one of them was resurrected and modified or filled in later.
Yeah, this is actually, this is an old Drosden. You know Michael Drosden that wrote
Yes.
the Bible Code, the original book, and did some codes, and in there, it, of course, it had Benjamin Netanyahu, an assassination attempt, etc., that probably saved Netanyahu's life at the time. But
yes.
He did another code. He called it the Obama Code in 2014, and I just got a post from Richard Shaw and Rabbi Glazerson. They redid that code, and now in that code, it was very interesting. It found 5772. It found Obama, and the code said, save the world. And Rabbi Glazerson just took that same code and reran it, and he found two words that were missing from the Drosden code. And so here's what it really says. It says 5772, Obama will not save the world. How do you like that?
Well, I guess everybody wants to save the world. They want to continue on with life here, and they don't want to be bothered by anyone who says possibly that's not going to happen. What's the other one on 5778?
Yeah,
we already know that'll. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
was just going to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that Obama's not out of the picture yet. People think he is, but he's not. And he is running counter interference on Trump on almost a daily basis. Now, that's not to say that Trump is not going to last for a while. Hopefully he does. I actually got an email saying, well, you guys want Trump to just fail. And that's an absolute lie, but it is typical of the kind of emails we get. I never said I wanted Trump to fail, ever. I don't think Larry has either. And I don't know where this warrior from Christ who's doing all these nasty writings is even coming from. Evidently doesn't listen very well. Anyway, Obama may appear, as Trump appears, to be saving the world at least temporarily. We could slide that one in there, temporary. But prophecy has to be fulfilled, whether people like it or don't like it. So the 5778, what is that about?
Well, that one is very, very interesting, and it's also by Rabbi Glazerson, and it's basically Trump Messiah 5778 Holocaust code. And of course, people do realize that 5778 is the Hebrew calendar, and we call it 2018 on our calendar, so we're talking about this year. Now, there's 11 wordings in this phrase. It's very interesting. Number one is Messiah, and of course I told you that they were beginning, really at the when the 5777 last year, you know, they were running some codes about 5778. A lot of the 5778 codes seem to have Messiah in them. Now, they also, Rabbi Glazerson also says that don't mean the Messiah is here doing this, but that he's influencing, or it's an anointing that is being produced to do a work from Messiah. Yes. But anyway, I won't go into that. Number one, Messiah. Number two, Israel. Number three, U.S. Number four, Trump. Number five, President. Number six is a phrase that says, "will save the world." Number seven is 5778, which, of course, is 2018. Now, this is what's interesting. It points towards the next four terms. The next four terms is number 8, from Iran. Number 9, nuclear. Number 10, Holocaust. Number 11, nuclear. So nuclear crosses Holocaust from Iran twice, actually. And so I don't know. I could be looking at it wrong, but it appears, if I read it right at all, and they're very hard to read prophetically. Yes. They almost have to be read in times past where you have the data. But it seems to indicate that from the Messiah, or somehow the Messiah is involving Israel and the U.S. and Trump, of course, and somehow saves the world somewhere or other in 5778 from an Iranian nuclear holocaust. Now, I can't interpret that, and I'm not even sure I read that correctly, but those are the words in the Matrix.
Well, it might be connected, too, to Cyrus and Trump, whom some, although they don't consider him the Messiah at all, he definitely is got Israel's attention. I mean, we've had this move now from a number of ways that Trump has really stirred up, the Israeli people. And I think next on the line will be, we could enter into a false peace. We might not have a war. It might be a peace when there is no peace. So it does make you kind of wonder, doesn't it? So he saved the world basically from an Iranian holocaust, a nuclear holocaust. So in other words, maybe, we do have that Daniel 8, and the rabbis over there, at least one who's done a lot of research on Daniel 8, claims that the he-goat is the United States, and the ram is Iran, or ancient Persia, or part of ancient Persia. And we really stomp on them really hard, according to Daniel 8. So maybe that's what it's referring to, that it stops an Iranian Holocaust. But it does say in Daniel 8 that they suddenly and without much warning decide to go on a blitzkrieg attack and cause some major problems before they're taken out. I don't know. What do you think? It's kind of interesting, though.
Well, that certainly is. It makes you wonder because, matter of fact, here's a Debka file headline today. It says explosions at arms and fuel depots and some of Iran's base near the Hama military airport in Syria. There's an attack destroyed arms structures, fuel depots, and surface-to-surface Revolutionary Guard Iranian missiles. So there was a major attack. Now, nobody's saying who did it, but I'm assuming Israel is, and I hope I'm not wrong, but it appears that Israel is still hitting the Iranian assets within Syria pretty much any time they want to.
Yeah, and the question is, how long is Iran going to put up with that before they make their mistake? Remember the bots had that deal with Israel and the Israeli mistake? And then they never could find out or never said what the mistake was, but it sounded like it was a miscalculation on their part. Now we know from Zechariah that, you know, Israel does suffer a huge loss in this upcoming war. And in Isaiah chapter 17, it says Jacob waxes thin, if I'm reading, paraphrasing it right, which would indicate they really do take a lot of people are going to perish over there in Israel in this, you know, this major war that's coming up. But hopefully we could have another delay. You know, we could maybe talk about that a little bit. We're always looking at a timeline, and I'm guilty of it, as probably most people are. But we've found out that, you know, you can have all the numbers, everything lines up like it did on 9/23, and even the occult. I'm positive we're sure that this was going to be the big deal. And then you had the Pope and Obama shaking hands on 9/23 on 2015. We had the sandstorm that delayed everything for at least 2 years. And so when you've got a delay built into the scriptures, which they are, and in fact in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it was mentioned that the delay was going to be far longer than even the prophets of the Lord, like Jeremiah, Isaiah, and the rest of them, would have ever believed. So that being built in, perhaps it's more of an event line, that we should be looking at events. And that tells us how close we are, because now Israel is, in fact, you know, we've got Jerusalem now as the capital officially. We've got the embassy moving, or has already moved. So what's left? According to the rabbis, it's the rebuilding of the temple. Those are events which signify we're close. And the Lord said, watch. And what you can watch for, of course, are events, not necessarily the time itself. So, anyway, any comment on that? I just think it's very odd. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just comment that something I never dreamed I would see when you're talking about the temple, you know, and I know there's people out there that just don't believe there's going to be a third temple. They don't believe that it's going to be rebuilt. There's a lot of them don't believe it needs to be rebuilt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, we talk about it because it appears prophetically that, you know, these things occur. And something I never ever thought I would see was a coin, even if you want to call it a commemorative coin, a coin coming out of the Sanhedrin, who we're talking about the temple folks, that had a Cyrus Trump on that coin and a new temple. If you've looked at the front and the back, I mean, boy, it is really plain as your face, you know. And I'm shocked because that almost to me is an event also pointing towards the time frame we're in. And this all began, Stewart. Isn't it interesting how none of this occurred? In other words, what we're talking about, none of it had occurred before the cosmic sign, the star sign that you've described, and a pivot, and we begin to call that a pivot point, and it certainly is turning out to be very much a pivot towards the Middle East.
Yeah, I don't. You can. How do I word this? You can look at timelines, but the event is going to, how do I say, confirm the timeline. And we're watching a confirmation. I mean, the Sanhedrin, you're right. I mean, and the Bible's very, very clear. I just wish people would read the Bible as it's written and not filter it through their biases. When Jesus said, "Come to me as a little child," that's exactly what he was talking about. You don't read your Bible through your Baptist eyes or your Catholic eyes or your Methodist eyes or Lutheran eyes or evangelical eyes. You read the Bible, it says what it says. And if people would just kneel down before the Lord and say, just show me the truth. That's what I want. And chuck all their biases. They'd read the Bible brand new, and it would certainly enlighten their eyes. But you have all these. I mean, I've watched on the web. My word, there are so many lies and distortions of what the Scripture says. It certainly does confirm that America is Babylon the Great, and one of the meanings of Babylon is confusion. And boy, are the American religious community confused. They've kind of left it off. But again, you got the prophecy that they would turn their ears away from the truth and be turned unto fables. So you can find a new doctrine out there on YouTube or anywhere else. They pop up virtually daily, some new concept. It's amazing. But what do you do with it? I mean, the Lord gave us the warnings. And if we don't want to pay attention to the warnings, then I guess, you have to be shipwrecked. Where do you want to start on, you mentioned before we got on the show, Putin and Assad had a visit. What do you know any more about what happened on that visit?
Well, it's very interesting. And by the way, I did want to interject here while we're in the Middle East, too, on this
yes.
UFO, over Golan.
Yeah, we can talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, Putin apparently called Assad for a meeting, and the meeting occurred in Sochi, Russia. And during that meeting, if what's true, there came a leaking out of that meeting, a report that Putin had told Assad that all foreign armies were about to leave Syria. Now, I can't enlarge on that because I don't have the data, and I can't even actually say that's true what was said, but that's the report that is coming out of Sochi, and so that's very interesting. And by the way, there's a very interesting report that came up a couple of days ago, and I was able to verify some of the data. I called you and I told you, I said they're reporting that Iron Dome shot a UFO out of the sky over the Golan Heights. And I said, of course, a UFO can mean, multiple things. It's UFO, that's unidentified flying object. I mean, that could be a lot of things. It could be a missile, it could be a drone, it could be a fighter jet, a bomber. I mean, it could be all kind of stuff. And but anyway, they're still calling it. And I did research, and I have found and gleaned information from a number of sources that are basically reporting that the Iron Dome missile system activated and shot down a UFO or an unidentified flying object, over the Golan. And reports are that, matter of fact, Ynet News had a photo image of the object strike, over the Golan. And I posted that today, and they're reporting that witnesses saw it fall from the sky into the Sea of Galilee. Now, what's also interesting is the fact that right after that, the Israeli Defense Forces military was activated and rushed to all borders of Israel, all the borders, you know, and we're not just talking about the north or the south borders. We're talking all the borders. So something big after this incident is going on, and we don't have a lot of data on it, but I verified it through about 4 or 5 different sources, and it appears valid, and Depcofile has not taken it down. They've enlarged a little bit on it, and it's there. I think what's happened basically, Stewart, and we really don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's got to be, I would say, probably more than a drone, because you remember they've shot down 1 or 2, at least 2 or maybe 3 Iranian drones and a Hezbollah drone, and they didn't move any armies. But after this, armies rushed through all, sections of Israel, and that's the last we know is the Sea of Galilee seems to be where it landed in the water, and that's all I've got. But you got any comments?
Yeah, that reminds me of Barry Chamish and the giants that were landing in Israel. And, according to insiders, and of course there's no way you can vet any of this stuff, but so-called aliens have been visiting Earth for virtually ever, and lately, according to them, the insiders, there's like 57, 70 or whatever alien races that are now visiting the planet. And we're being set up, folks. Number one, the Bible calls them liars and deceivers. They are not from other planets. They are interdimensional creatures. And some of the people that have done a lot of research on it have more or less proven that it's spiritual in its nature. And a lot of these entities are shapeshifters. They can take on any shape they want, and they can present themselves to the human race in any shape that they want, which is why you have some problems with some of them, because the shape would not allow them to build the technology they claim they've built. But that's neither here nor there. It's just an interesting thing, because the Bible talks about these satanic fallen angels, and that's what we're dealing with. But they are posing as extraterrestrials, and they can be as solid as you or I when they materialize. And in the Chamish book, he said also that the government over there, if I remember right, you've read it more than I have, or probably more astute in how he said it, but weren't they dealing with the government over there as well?
Well, that's very true, Stewart. And let me run this incident by you, because I researched this when it happened, and I watched a lot of this activity, and I've actually got my own copy of Return of the Giants. That was the name of the book by Barry Chamish, and I think you can still get a copy on Amazon, an old copy. Somebody bought all of them, but there's still a few circling around Amazon, and they're not cheap. And what I wanted to relate was that Barry chronicled in person. He investigated each of the landing sites. He talked to all the witnesses, and they said that these beings were coming down in craft of some kind, landing, and they were giants. They were a lot bigger than a regular man. And there was even reports that Netanyahu and his government had actually met with the giants and visited with them, had a conference or something. And remember, this is something I want to interject right here, is the fact that after that, after Barry's book and after Netanyahu, the report about Netanyahu and all of this, and we had at the time a lot of problems with the Iranian nuclear systems, early systems, and what happened is, about that time, after the landings, after the so-called conference, etc., is when there was an insertion of something called Stuxnet. And if people don't, you research that. You can Google it, Stuxnet, Stuxnet. It was a virus, a computer virus that was injected into the Iranian nuclear facilities and destroyed all of their activity and ability to actually create nuclear weapons. And that was, and what's interesting is since then, McAfee, who you recognize the name,
sure.
McAfee, and actually the one out of Russia, I forget the name of it right at this minute, but there's another firm out of Russia. They tried to combat some of the, if you will, hybrid viruses that were coming out of Stuxnet and tried to conquer them, put them down, and McAfee finally gave up and actually sold his company, John McAfee, and he said that the Stuxnet virus was something that they had never seen before, and he said it's been invested into the Internet, and he said we cannot remove it. We can never heal the Internet of Stuxnet. So whatever was given, America claimed that Israel did it. Israel said America had something to do with it. We really don't know. But whoever gave it to them to use or invented it, it's almost like Lyme's disease or Ebola, etc. It's a destroyer, and it's once it was used and interjected into our planetary Internet, it cannot be removed or us protected from it again, and it actually grows and changes, is what I've heard. What do you think?
That's kind of like a shape-shifting, but it's a virus instead. Yeah, a lot of this apparently also may have to do with the so-called fallen angels. They are definitely giving advanced technology to us, like Stan Deo has mentioned time after time, actually, that a lot of this stuff is coming from backwards engineering. That's where we got a lot of our stuff from, computers and what do they call that, light cables that transmit light for your communications. Fiber optics. That all came from backwards engineering from so-called crashed UFOs. And really what it is, it's a setup. And the human race is going to go into what the Bible clearly calls, and it's interesting, the Bible's the only one that talks about it, the strong delusion. And a strong delusion is tied directly to the arrival. So it's got to be the apex of the delusion. And at the base of that, of course, I've always felt, and I think you can prove it, is the evolution conspiracy. And it is a conspiracy. There's no such thing as evolution. There is only wide-ranging adaptation. And when the classifications of families, when they reach the limit of what the environment hands out, you have a die-off. And right now we're having all kinds of die-offs all over the place. So, but it's not evolution. And the evolution concept, of course, is confirmed by the arrival of the fallen ones, because they shapeshift, and then they sit there and they say, well, our planet was a little bit different, and that's why we're shaped different. That's why we look different. I mean, you've got it right in front, actually, of our noses. When you watch something like Star Trek, you'll notice that when they go into these kind of bars to party, they got all these weird-looking creatures. Well, that's the evolutionary concept being pushed upon the people. They evolved differently, and that's why they look differently. Well, it's all a baloney. It's a total baloney. And I don't know what you can do to convince people to, watch out.
One thing about
lights. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, you said, I don't know what you could do about that. You could certainly ask them, since evolution claims that apes developed into men, why are there still apes?
Exactly. Well, people don't, how do I word this? You don't want to think about logic. You know, it's like any creature. If we, like you just said, I mean, if we came up from the monkeys and the apes, they wouldn't even be around now. They'd all been dead. But the Bible's very, very clear that creation is an intelligent design is where it's all at, and all you got to do is go out and look at a butterfly, and you can figure out the Lord must have had a wonderful time putting all these things together. I was out looking at birds today, and so many, many different birds, and they're all different in every way, and yet we have that balance of nature. And people who don't really believe the Bible is true should take a look at the mathematical continuity within it. It's way, way beyond anything any scientist can answer. So it's not that the truth isn't out there in their face. They just don't want to accept it. Speaking about the truth, here's a headline for you. We're going to bounce around a little bit. Pope Francis demotes Jesus Christ to third and claims Mary is the source of our hope. What is going on over there? Now, I know they worship Mary, but this is a real demotion. And, of course, Pope Francis is a Jesuit. What's your comment on that? I mean, they just won't quit rewriting the scriptures.
Yeah, what's so interesting is the Bible clearly talks about a place called hell. And matter of fact, you even have scripture for hell enlarging itself. And then Pope Francis says there is no hell. So we're not getting much consistent rhetoric out of the Vatican lately through Pope Francis. And by the way, you've seen the reports as I have lately. He's now talking about retiring or leaving the Vatican and letting a new pope come in.
Yeah, I think Tom Horn mentioned something about that they thought there was going to be one more pope who would be called Peter the Roman. So I guess we all sit and wait and see what happens. Here again, that's an event. And it's the events that are going to tell us. I think we're awful close, but who knows? The hand of the Lord has been risen more than once. You see all this stuff beginning to happen. You think you're right on the cusp, and then there's a delay. So I would not get dismayed. When you really think this is it, when it isn't. But anyway, all we can do is wait and watch, like the Lord said, and occupy. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to occupy. North Korea buying time to hide nukes with threat to cancel U.S. summit, intelligence officials now say. I have always thought this is just a trap. He's not serious. They're going to hide the nukes, even if they, maybe ship them to China or they're underground. I noticed another article which said he was not going to allow any South Korean officials to come witness the so-called shutdown of that so-called nuclear plant. But isn't that the place where they already had that explosion and killed all those people?
Oh, yeah, that's the mountain where they did their testing, and after the last explosion, it imploded and collapsed. Most of that, I mean, if I was him, I'd close that thing too, because a lot of people are being radiated out of that place. But, there again, he's not going to let anybody come look at it. It's interesting. What's interesting to me is one of the Barry, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but Barry Rothman did a Torah code on something about, he noted was Kim's atomic train. And we're well aware, I really looked and researched that train that Kim actually took to Beijing and back. And he's got armored trains that he can use. And the odds are the Torah codes are indicating that Kim actually begins to haul nukes on special trains. And some of them go as far as over into Russia, according to the Torah code. So if he begins to move, he says, I'm denuclearizing. Well, if you've got them on trains, trains can go away from you, and they can bring things back. So I'm just not sure this is going to work out well in the Korean Peninsula.
No, Kim would want to be the dictator of the whole thing, and now he's calling the South Korean people basically incompetent, and he's threatened not to talk to them either. It's typical Kim. He's a shyster from the beginning. He knows how to do this. I mean, he's a shakedown artist, and we keep falling for it over and over again. So yeah, I would believe that rabbi's prophecy about North Korea and a nuclear situation develops out of there. But it just seems odd to me. It reminds me of the movie Peacemaker. And folks, if you haven't seen the movie Peacemaker, you might want to go get it, because it talks about actually what they did. There was a nuclear train. A very, very interesting movie. So, and Russia does have trains, I think, with missiles on them. And they just move them around, which is kind of smart in a way, but anyway, just another part of it.
Hey, by the way, Stuart.
Yes.
I don't know if you knew it, and I'm pretty sure I'm not giving away any new secrets. It might be an old secret. But, I was in SAC, the Strategic Air Command, with the nuclear forces years ago in the Air Force.
Yes.
And I was shocked to find that we had a train. And it hauled exactly what you're talking about across the country. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that you were under Curtis LeMay. He was one of the most famous of SAC commanders, and he was getting the B-52s off the ground in a couple of minutes. And, he really drilled his crews kind of hard. But that was back during, what's interesting, though, Larry, when I was flying for General Electric Company, which is basically around that same time, the CEOs and the senior people at General Electric told us, the flight crews, and they come up and they talk, and it's very, very interesting what you hear. They said, don't worry about a nuclear war. There's not going to be one yet. So they were telling us that during that whole period of time, they knew that there was going to be no war, whatever. And, of course, they live under a whole different regime of law of the merchants, which most people have never heard of, but you can Google it, law of the merchants. It's a higher law, it's a higher order of things. And this whole thing is run by the rich men of the earth, just like the Bible says. Psalm 2, rich men of the earth. They run it. So they knew back then, when all the kids were hiding under desks and they were having all these drills, there wasn't going to be a war. And what they do, I think, is, from what I have heard, what I have seen, they use the threat of war to bring in huge sums of money to perfect their weapons, because ultimately there is going to be a war. And it's not going to be a fun war when it comes. And anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. We learned an awful lot from the people we flew around about high technology and the things that were really going on. Let's talk about this school thing. The last report I had, 10 dead, 10 wounded.
Yeah, that's pretty close to what I was seeing on it. That's that school, Santa Fe, down by Galveston, Texas.
This is going to continue. I want to read something that was put out back in, I can't remember when he wrote it. Let me see if I can find it right away. Yeah, Bill Cooper. The government encouraged the manufacture and importation of military firearms for the criminals to use. This is intended to foster a feeling of insecurity which would lead the American people to voluntarily disarm themselves by passing laws against firearms, using drugs and hypnosis on mental patients in a process called Orion. The CIA inculcated the desire in these people to open fire on schoolyards and thus inflame the anti-gun lobby. This plan is well underway. So far, it's working perfectly. So there you go, folks. And I want to relate you back. If you want to know what's really going on, you go back to State Department document 7277. And I've got this is interesting, Larry. I don't know if you've seen this. This is Hal Turner, so I don't know if you can. He shows a picture of it. He captured it off his computer. According to Google search engine, the New York Times story about today's shooting is time-stamped by Google as 1 day ago. So already there's something wrong with this incident. How did the New York Times story get picked up by Google search engines a day ago, or did the Times write it early? What do you think? I mean, this is weird.
Yeah, we're seeing this, Stewart, time after time. We're seeing that something is wrong with all of these, if you will, possible false flags. I mean, we're seeing just, it's incredible how this continually crops up.
Yeah, this is like the number 3 in 7 days or something like that, somebody said. But anyway, what's going on here is an agenda out of the United Nations. It's called State Department document 7277. Go Google it, folks, if you want to know what's going on. It's called Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. Well, the American people are already very divided. You got the socialist communist left that is anti-gun to the core. They'd get rid of all the guns if they could. You wouldn't even be able to. And then they'll go after knives. In fact, they're doing that, I think, in Australia or Great Britain. They're starting to go after knives now.
Yeah.
Pretty soon it'll be baseball bats, and then it'll be cars, because you can kill somebody with a car. I mean, it's total insanity. And what they're really telling you, you don't have any right to defend yourself against a criminal. But anyway, the overall goal of the United States is a free, secure, and peaceful world of independent states adhering to common standards of justice and international conduct and subjecting the use of force to the rule of law. Now, this is very interesting, a peaceful world of independent states, because that's what Trump wants. He doesn't want total, merging of all the nations together, losing their sovereignty. He wants them to keep their sovereignty. But this is what they say: the disbanding of all national armed forces and a prohibition of their reestablishment in any form whatsoever other than those required to preserve internal law and for contributions to United Nations Peace Force. The elimination from national arsenals of all armaments, including all weapons of mass destruction, and the means for their delivery other than those required for the United Nations Peace Force and for maintaining internal order. Number 3, the institution of effective means for the enforcement of international agreements. And then the last one, this is, I guess the United Nations wants all the missiles. They want all the nuclear weapons. They want all the military stuff all under their control. And folks, we've talked before about a communist infiltration of the United States. This is what we're watching. It's a communist coup. No other word for it, not really. And the United Nations is a communist organization. It's a communist charter that it operates under, very similar to the Russian Constitution. It's communism. And we're being slow-walked into it. And so, like Larry was saying, this never stops. And it won't stop either. We're going to have more school shootings. And I did read where this kid had gone on Facebook, which, by the way, they removed almost instantly. It said something about he wanted to commit suicide. So they're already going after this mental health issue, which is communism to the core. That's what Soviet Russia did. If you weren't a communist, you were insane. You had a mental problem. So off you go into a mental institution. Commonly known, but we're watching it all over again because this is the emphasis now. We've got to do something about getting these weapons out of people who are mentally unstable. Well, guess who the communists call mentally unstable? If you believe in motherhood, apple pie, grandma, you don't believe in abortion, and you don't believe in this, and you don't believe in that. If you believe in Bible prophecy or you believe the Bible could possibly be true, guess what? You're mentally incompetent. And this is where this is headed. What do you think, Larry? I mean, this is my take on it.
Well, what's interesting is most recently, a great sign in America of mental illness is if you believe in Jesus Christ. How do you like that?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And if you believe in the Constitution or you believe in the Bill of Rights. And, folks, we have had fusion centers springing up everywhere. If you're not familiar with the term fusion center, what it does is it collects all the local data on local people. And don't forget Jade Helm or their logo. Jade Helm was active in 2015, 2016, and I think they did it again in 2017, where they were rounding up dissidents in practice. This is practice. And they had it on TV. They had it on YouTube. You probably go Google Jade Helm or go on YouTube and just type in Jade Helm. The logo was about communist concentration camps. I mean, it's right in your face, and people still are in total denial that anything like this could happen. I don't know, Larry. What do you do with it?
Well, I'll tell you what. It's a shame the people in America can't seem to wake up. But this thing is headed over the cliff, it appears. Yeah.
There's a new article from that ne'er-do-well, erstwhile Sort Your Fall, that people just, they don't believe anything she says, which is a mistake, because a lot of times you can't absolutely vet it. It may take 2 or 3 weeks before you get the proof of what they say, and I'm not sure where this comes from. Probably the Russian KGB would be, or FSB now. But anyway, here's what she has to say about fears raised after China begins building mass indoctrination camps across America. Now, most Americans would just laugh and mock at that. But I was just reading an article. That's how the Lord works. I found an article about what Z is doing over there in China. And they are building these huge concentration camps over there. They call them re-education camps. Well, Hillary Clinton said we all had to go to a re-education camp. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, she wasn't kidding. She was dead serious. She was going to send everybody to a FEMA camp. But listen to this one, because this is scary. We've already talked about the social credit system of China. We've already talked about how they have developed a system of total awareness of where you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking, blah, 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 blah. Social credit system. All right. As a justification to the fears being raised by the U.S. House Intelligence Committee, who just declared that Communist China now poses a preeminent threat to the American security and values, a new Foreign Intelligence Service report is further questioning why the Chinese have begun building mass indoctrination camps throughout the United States, modeled on those used in their own country to culturally cleanse those not adhering to approved state thought. They've actually got witnesses who have escaped these camps, and they torture them. They do all kinds of things to them, and it's to change their thinking. Re-education. Anyway, according to the report, Communist China, home to 20% of the world's population, but only 8% of the world's arable land, has gone abroad in search of farmland to feed its over 1.4 billion population, and whose main focus has been on the United States, where by 2014, foreign nations had acquired a staggering 23.3 million acres of American land. And I know that's true. They've been doing that. And that equals the entire size of the state of Tennessee. China's main focus in land acquisition in the United States has been their acquiring massive farms and farmlands that they first began to acquire in the state of California and New York, where they had built up large population centers, and from there has spread out across the United States, gobbling up land in Texas, Virginia, Florida, and Indiana, and acquiring nearly 80,000 housing units, to which they are flooding into some of their top military, intelligence, police, and population control experts. While Communist China rapidly accelerating its buying up of nearly every single piece of land in America it can get, the report continues, gravely alarmed when the Obama regime allowed the largest Chinese acquisition of an American company to date, which was China's acquisition of the largest food producer in the U.S., called Smithville Foods. This is interesting because now satellite technology has shown that they are building huge camps in the land that they claim now they own. So, satellite images are detecting today the construction of at least 370 massive concentration camp compounds able to accommodate over 500,000 human beings. So why are they doing it? So, hour upon hour, day after day, detainees in far west in China's new indoctrination camps have to disavow all their religious beliefs, criticize themselves and their loved ones, and give thanks to the ruling Communist Party. What do the American people think is going to happen to them? We have FEMA camps, proven, all over America. Now we have these Chinese camps, proven, by satellite images. We have ISIS training camps right here in America. The FBI knows all about it, does nothing about it. Trump has done nothing about any of these things that are the real danger to America. This thing is all a setup, folks. All you got to do is look at the proof, look at the evidence of what is being done and what is not being done. And the main things about NDAA, Homeland Security, FEMA, none of that has been deactivated. To the contrary, the surveillance technology and everything is increasing by leaps and bounds. What do you think, Larry? I think we're in for trouble.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're in for trouble, and I can guarantee you the American people are simply not ready. Matter of fact, I've seen a number of prophetic reports lately, some of them on Z3 News, that is claiming, being shown by the Lord, that the American people are not ready for anything that's coming.
No, they aren't. They aren't because they're in denial. They want America to be, the way it always has been. Trump is going to save the United States, and I get irritated when I get an email from somebody saying that I want Trump down. I'm not saying that at all. I don't even want America to be destroyed, but God says it's going to be destroyed. Face it. Wake up to it. Prepare yourselves. What else can you tell people? How do I word this? I'm not here to tickle anybody's ears. I'm here to try and warn people of the absolute truth of Scripture. All you got to do is go back into the history books and look what happened to Jerusalem. And look at what the people in Jerusalem did when they were being surrounded. They had tea parties watching the enemies. Then they began to eat their babies. They began to eat their children. This is going to get worse in America. And I'll never forget Red Elk when he said, first of all, we're going to be invaded. But secondly, we're going into a massive drought. And I think it's already begun. You've got drought down there, right, Larry?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it says exceptional drought in Southwest means bad news for grain. We're going into starvation, and yet you can't tell people that because they go to the grocery store and it's all there. It's not going to be. What else you got, Larry? We got a few minutes left. Boy, there's so much news out there.
I was looking at Fox News. It says everything's okay. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle get married tomorrow, so the world's in good shape, Stewart.
Here's a final headline. Emergency situation in Israel as IDF troops are all deployed to the borders. What's that?
Well, that was in connection, I think. That occurred during the time of this UFO being shot down. And, by the way, before the show's over, I was going to get your opinion on this new report on Standeo website, Evidence of Planet X. Now Planet 9 does exist, piles up.
Yeah, well, we know it exists because the Bible says it exists. It's called the Destroyer, Planet of the Crossing. It's called all kinds of different names. But it's out there. It is coming. We know it's coming because the Bible says it's coming. As to when, I guess, again, the Lord can delay it. And in fact, we've had scientific people say that they can't really pinpoint its movements because it speeds up and then it slows down. So it's under the control of the Lord. In fact, in Isaiah it says the weapons of the Lord, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation. So, yeah, I think what they did was they ran a program to get everybody excited about it. And then when nothing appeared, nothing showed up, people go back to sleep. And now they won't believe it even if the warnings are there. They'll believe it only when they see it in the skies.
Well,
any final words?
Yeah, I was just going to mention the fact, isn't that what really occurred according to the Colburn Bible, that was when they really woke up, was when it was looking at them in their face?
Yes. The precursor signs have been here now for quite some time, but the book of the Colburn says that back then, and that's all ancient writings, by the way, folks, they said they just didn't recognize those forewarning signs that the destroyer was approaching. We have those forewarning signs that were listed in there. We'll have to get into that. Book of the Colburn, very, very interesting about the destroyer and what mankind thought about it and everything else. But it wipes out civilizations. Periodically, we just get wiped out. I remember when Solon went to Egypt, the priests of Egypt said that the world is periodically cleansed, destroyed. Jesus called it the end of the age. Anyway, Thanks, folks. Thanks, Larry, for coming on. And we'll see you again next week, the Lord willing. Appreciate everybody listening and helping us out. We sure need it. Anyway, thanks again. Good night.